Welcome to the first episode of Proscast. Before we get started, I want to introduce our guest, Dr. Sompop Bencharit. So, if you don't know anything about Proscast, and how would you? This is our first episode. What we're going to be talking about mostly is dental education, AI, haptics, and pretty much any technology that's going to further dentistry in all of its fields. So, in education, in private practices, Somp here with us today. He's gonna help me run this podcast. He's a board certified prosthodontist, educator, researcher, innovation leader, and most of your career you've been exploring this intersection of like clinical dentistry, digital technology, research, education, but your goal is really to integrate technology into dental medicine, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gardner. Thank you for the kind introduction. So in the past, probably 12 or 15 years or so, I kind of shift my career from more like a clinician, scientist, faculty to look into just the innovation that involve in dental practices, dental education, and research, right?
Yeah.
And it's starting from my interest as a dental student, interest in dental implants, right? Dental implant was a big thing back in the 80s, 90s. So now it evolved to be digital dentistry, which including intraoral scanning, including 3D printing, and now, the I think the last part, or maybe the most important, most recent, would be AI. So those are things that I end up evolve myself into.
Yeah. And you've sort of, I think you've been in so many areas of the industry now that you probably have a really good vision on what it's going to take to get those technologies well integrated into the industry. I mean, right now you serve as the director of innovation at AIDM or Austin Institute of Dental Medicine, and you're helping them do that there with the haptics, with the AR, with AI. Um, and then it as well been going around to other institutions and in a more laid back commitment style, just been helping them introduce these technologies. And from every level as well. Because you're on a few boards as well, right?
Yeah. So I wearing a few hats. So I served as a innovation dean of two different dental school recently, and when I stepped back from a full-time academic career, of course you mentioned the AIDM. So I help Austin Institute of Dental Medicine integrate the technology into their training of their residents. I also a president of AHEAD, which is a artificial intelligence, haptic education, and advanced digital dentistry. So basically, a group of people around the world that get together and think about how we best integrate technology into dental school or institutional research or practices. I also found a company with you, right? Digital
Yeah.
Dentistry and Innovation, which the idea is that we wanted to help facilitate the integration of technology into dental education, dental practice, and also being a liaison between the industry who lead the innovation and educator and clinicians and
Yeah.
research.
And you mentioned in that one of the integral parts of what you first got interested in was implants. And then it's of course it's changed, but that's still a foundational part of prosthodontics now. Something we've been working on in DDI, learning about how to implement is this cap system, this new cap system. What do you think those main advantages of the cap system are compared to the conventional approaches, particularly in these full arch cases?
So I will show my in my presentation, but we can just briefly go over it just a little bit. So ideally, you want to make a prosthesis, especially a full arch implant prosthesis, fit really well, because if the prosthesis doesn't fit on top of the implant really well, it create a problem. Problem meaning that the functioning force when the patient are shielding eating and functioning on their prosthesis, it generates a lot of force. And when it generates a lot of force, it produces, when you have just a minute discrepancy, meaning if certain part doesn't fit together well, it creates the problem. For example, the fractures of the infrastructure, like a porcelain, acrylics, or metal, even metal, or the bending, fracture, or loosening of the screw that hold the part onto the abutment, onto the implant. So the idea is, how can we manage to get the best fit prosthesis without paying a lot of equipment, pay for equipment, or pay for technology, without using a so high-end technology. And this is when the cap system come into play, that we don't have to pay so much, and the technology is relatively simple, and you can use with 360 plus implant system, and also it work with any intraoral
Yeah.
scanner that we have.
And I think I'm getting ahead of myself. I think I should probably let you do your whole presentation on these technologies we're working with, and then I'll save my questions for the end.
Okay, that sounds good. So I'm gonna share my screen. I'm gonna do my presentation, and then when I finish, then you can talk. You can ask me a question, and we can talk. So Garner, thank you for the kind introductions, and this is our first Proscast, episode 1. Thank you for our sponsor, Digital Dentistry Innovation, AHEAD Consortium, and Dynamic Abutment Solution. So the topic I'm going to talk about today is digital implant prosthodontics, cap technology, and the future of full arch implant workflows. So why do we need aqueous impression? So the reason why we need aqueous impression is for the passive fit of the prosthesis, because if the prosthesis or the framework you can see on the right hand side doesn't fit onto the implant or the implant abutment, the main consequence would be a loosening of the screw, which is one of the most common technical complication for implant. You can have a fractures of the framework, the veneer, or the marginal bone loss due to the misfits of the upper prosthesis. Now, in the literature, the physical threshold suggests that you can have a slight, of course, we can never make everything perfectly fit, but the marginal gap of around 120 to 150 micron are thought to be clinically acceptable. However, there's no universal consensus on this. So technically, if you have the RMS, we meaning the deviation for the fitting about 62 micron, we translate into gap about 150 micron are clinically acceptable. And we need to assess this by clinically. But what's happening is usually we can't assess the fit overall misfitting, but we can always fitting up one by one, either the framework to abutment or the framework to the implants. Unfortunately, there's no ideal world, right? So we can never have a complete absolute passive fit, but we can have what we call the clinically acceptable fit. So a lot of people ask me now that what is we scan all the time. Is it the digital impression or scanning is enough or even better than conventional ones? So a systematic review and a meta-analysis have shown that there's no significant difference on overall conventional impression or digital impression. And if you have about 4 implants or less, there's no difference between the conventional impression and digital impression. However, if you have more than 4 implants, the conventional impression is probably more favorable. Ideally, a photogrammetry have shown that photogrammetry is the best way to register or make impression of the implant positioning. However, we will talk a little bit about photogrammetry and limitation. Two limitation is, one is it cannot register the soft tissues sit underneath the prosthesis, And the second one is also it cannot register the occlusion or inter arch relationship. Now you can see the meta-analysis on the right side, and you can see the conventional and the digital, and you can already see that conventional have more variable and digital are more consistent. But in general, I would say that there's not much difference between the conventional and digital impression of the full arch implant. So if you look at the clinical outcome, meaning that the time in operation time, meaning impression time or scanning time, and the bone remodeling around implant, either using conventional or digital impression, you can see that there are not much significant difference in terms of long-term clinical outcome. However, in the chair time or clinical operation time, digital scanning have saved a lot more time, roughly about 10 minutes per scan comparing to conventional impression. So nowadays we have probably thousands and thousands of scan body, and people not usually pay attention to scan body that much. They pay attention to more so on the impression system or the scanning system. All scan body create equal? The answer is no. Certain scan bodies are better than other scan body. For example, the shorter, the wider are better than the one that too long and the one that are too small in width-wise. And you can see the data clearly show. And the caveat is that you want the scan body to be tall enough so that the scanner can capture it, but not so tall that it's difficult for the scanner to go over intraorally. So roughly about 4.5 millimeter platforms seem to be best. For the posterior region, 6 millimeter seem to be good for the anterior. And you can see that the shorter a scan body is create less deviation, platform deviation, horizontally, as well as the angular deviation. Now, you want to make sure that you pick the right height and the right size of the scan body, and you'd also have to think about the soft tissue, because the soft tissue is too high, it's going to be difficult for the scanner to register the scan body. So the width matter. So the width of a scan body, roughly at least 4.8 millimeters, seem to do better. The shape of it, the cylindrical shape, seem to be better in linear accuracy. The cuboidal shapes seem to be better for angular accuracy. And you can see that the shorter design is better. However, you can see that there's a variation between the scanner. As you can see on the right-hand side, certain scanners are sensitive to certain geometry. But in general, the majority of the best scanner in the market are capable of doing this scanning pretty well. And as you can see here in this study, showed that this recent study looking at the horizontal scan body versus the vertical scan body, the scan body that have a vertical arm seem to do better. And if you look at the graph on the right side, the very bottom one are the lab scanner, meaning that those are the E4 scanner, which is accuracy of roughly about 4 micron. So it's a really exceptional scanner, but you can already see that majority of the latest scanner are doing really well on keeping up with the accuracy. So if you look at the horizontal or vertical scan body, there's some slightly differences, and systematic review of the 10 studies suggests that horizontal design, meaning the design that have horizontal arm or an extended part of the scan body, help increase trueness or increase accuracy. And it also have some variability between the operator, and it also, you have to think about the accessibility of the intraoral scanner. So the too complex design going to be a little bit more difficult to scan. A too tall scanner going to be more difficult to scan. the top horizontal design have the threshold, the RMS deviation, which is lower than 46 micron, we translate that, remember, is lower than 150 micron of the gap. And as you can see here, there's the study on the right side, recent study looking at the splinting, a horizontal arm and non-horizontal arm, and it's finding that the splinting doesn't improve the accuracy that much, but the horizontal arm may have improved the accuracy just a little bit. Still, the photogrammetry is probably still the gold standard. So let's talk a little bit about the photogrammetry, right? The photogrammetry, what is the photogrammetry? Photogrammetry is basically the way we register the implant position, and in general, it called photogrammetry. So basically, you have this hand holding device on the left side. You can see that the assistant was holding that device that have two camera. It looked like the two eyes, right? You see 3D because we have two pictures that the brain register. That's how you see you capture an image in 3D. It's the same as photogrammetry, and you can see it's, but the photogrammetry is only capture the position implant without the soft tissue. So the soft tissue still need to be captured using intraoral scanner, and then you have the software that kind of merge them together. This picture come from the system, the common system called PIC. And if you look at the study in general, photogrammetry are probably the most accurate way to measure the implant positioning in terms of trueness, in terms of precision. And if you look at 3D deviation, on the right-hand side, you have the blue, which is a conventional impression, the yellow, which is the intraoral scanner, the green, which is the splinted oral intraoral scanner, the SPG is the photogrammetry. So the photogrammetry probably right now is the gold standard of how to register the implant positioning. Now, the issue that we have is, we have a lot of multiple systems that are good, and but it's complicated for clinician. It's also, we have a lot of good scanner now, like the Prime Scan, the 306, the iTero-Luminar. These are exceptional scanner that have accuracy that approaching photogrammetry level. So as the scanner technology grow better, the intraoral photogrammetry become more accurate. And as you can see here, this is one study that looking at the full arch implant, and you can see the top one that look like this look like a dice. Those are extraoral photogrammetry, meaning you take a picture from the outside, and you can see next to it is the intraoral scan body, and we have 3 different scanner to use here. And on the bottom left is that what we call the intraoral photogrammetry, meaning that you use this, you still snap the picture, but you snap the picture using the one that can act as both intraoral scanner and also intraoral photogrammetry. And if you look at these, basically all of these systems are clinically acceptable. Of course, the extraoral photogrammetries are still the best, but you can see that the intraoral scanner and the intraoral photogrammetry accuracy are approaching the gold standard now. So I would predict that in the near future, if it's not right now, that the intraoral photogrammetry in combination with intraoral scanner will replace the extraoral photogrammetry. So still, for people who not everybody have extraoral photogrammetry or even intraoral photogrammetry, if you have less than 4 implants, you can scan using your scan body or your intraoral scanner you use. If you have more than 4, you should consider photogrammetry. If you have a scan body, think about if you want a short, wide, cylinder, and if you have horizontal arm, that will help. And also, You want to incorporate some kind of artificial landmarks if you can, but we don't have time to talk about that today. Also, always verify, meaning that after you register the position, you want to print out or mill out the prototype, try it in, make sure your position is accurate before you proceed to the final restoration. So what if most people don't have extraoral or even intraoral photogrammetry? So how and we talk about photogrammetry cannot register the occlusion. So what if you want to register occlusion at the same time? We also don't have a photogrammetry. So we're gonna shift our gear to talk about the CAP system, which is stand for the complete arch pillar system, that basically belong to dynamic abutment. The issue that we have when you scan full arch is the soft tissue are not easy to manipulate using the intraoral scanner. Remember, the intraoral scanner is just calibrated for something that hard, something that not movable, something that's solid like teeth. But the soft tissue are not helping it, right? So and you can see that when you scan from one side to the other side, you accumulate the registration error. And the more movement you have, the data stitching error become more pronounced. And as you can see here that in this schematic, if you have a short span, like you scan for single crown or a small fixed partial denture or what we call bridges, then those are fine. The longer the span or the full arc, the distortion become more prominent. So if you do a topographic, you can, if you think about topographic distortion, you can see that deviation is increased at the distance or the number of the implant, the distance of the soft tissue or the number of the implant that we have in the arch. Now, because of in the edentulous arch, we don't have a landmark. So the CAP system provide what we call the registration and the landmark and also the known length, allow the software to register the implant position better. So let's go over the system just a little bit. So the system have this one piece, which is a scan body, which is the reusable sandblast titanium piece here, and you can have these peak pin. So and this scan body can be sterilization and reuse. The peak pin, which is a somewhat, I think, is disposable. You can screw it in and it have some various length based on the length that you need. And you can have from 6 to 9 to 13 millimeters. And the reference scan body can be placed over, in this case, the multi-unit abutment, or it actually can be placed directly onto the implant strictures as well. And the other part that unique to the CAP system is it not just have this horizontal arm or the peak pin, that what they call it, to help calibrate the distance between the implant. It's also have this CAP pillar. And the system was invented by Philip Newtons, who a good friend of mine, and he had this ingenious idea that create this that vertical CAP pillar that can register not just the vertical dimension, but also the center relation or jaw relation. So what we do, we screw everything in, we scan, and then basically be done. And we deliver, the idea is we can deliver the case within the 150 micron accuracy. And instead of we do intraoral scanning with scan body, and we have to do some kind of weird registration, like you see here, we're using wax or some elastomeric materials. We use this CAP system, and we can do intraoral scanning of the scan body plus the lateral horizontal dimension, and also we can do occlusal reduction in the single visit. And this would allow immediate loading or immediate provisionalization of the full arch implant. And you can see here, you can adjust the intraocclusal registration from less than 4 millimeters to roughly about 8 millimeters. And you can see this is the vertical dimension that we can record using this system. And you can see here that if I can play this video, you can see here that you can register using the lateral scan, and you can have that superimpose, and you can register both the vertical dimension and horizontal dimension and center relation, as well as the resistance and position of the implant at the same time. So this is one of my case that I did yesterday, actually. So you can see I have a registration, and I'm able to use that registration to create the interim prosthesis. The interim prosthesis is used to verify the implant position, aesthetic, and occlusion all at the same time. So of course, these are not if you compare the traditional iOS, you have a low accuracy and a low hardware cost. Is still require verifying jig. It may or may not be single visit. It can be single visit, but it's kind of complicated, and it doesn't need much but scan body. But the ideal system that we should have a extraoral photogrammetry, which is very high accuracy in combination with scan body. However, not everybody can afford extraoral or have access to extraoral photogrammetry. I think the CAP system come in between, meaning that it still provide the clinical acceptability of accuracy and passive fit of the prosthesis without the cost that not so high, with a minimal changes of hardware. It's compatible with all scan system, and it allow you to create a single visit registration, and you can mail or print your interim prosthesis if you have access to in the same day. And you can see here, this is the case that Philip gave it to me. You can see that you can do this in pretty much in single visit if you have access to. And of course, you always verify with your copy mill, that what I called it, before you finalize your zirconia prosthesis. And I'm just before I end my talk, I just want to give you a take-home message from this talk. Is like, number one is as we know, the intraoral scanner continue to evolve. So digital impression of force implant prosthesis is evolve every day. For now, if you want to use a scanner only, I recommend that 4 implant or less. You don't need to splint. If you have more than 4 implant, ideally, of course, extraoral photogrammetry plus intraoral scanner is a gold standard. However, the intraoral photogrammetry now getting just as good or almost as good as the extraoral one. So I would be okay if you have a good intraoral scanner with the intraoral photogrammetry. However, if you don't have photogrammetry at all, the CAP system probably be the best alternative you have. But in any case, remember, you always need to have a good intraoral scanner. And thank you for listening to me. I have my work email here if you want to, if you're interested in, I write about twice a day on LinkedIn, and I'm also reposted on Instagram. So follow me on LinkedIn and follow me on Instagram. And thank you for your attention. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now, and then we can continue our conversation.
Thank you, Sompop. I have a few questions. What I was wondering was at the very beginning you were sort of showing the differences between all these existing systems, like statistically, as far as their accuracy goes, and side by side. Is there something like that with the cap? You could compare this cap system, like as far as its accuracy, its um, um, margin of error, that you could write all these different metrics that you can compare side by side with the others.
For now, I would say that the CAP system have roughly about less than 150 micron accuracy, which is probably, I would say, the top would be photogrammetry plus intraoral scanner. And I would say that that would be 50 micron or around 50 micron accuracy. The second tier would be the intraoral photogrammetry with intraoral scanner. So that would be probably in around less than 100 micron accuracy. And next one would be the cap system, which is less than 150 micron, and slightly lower than that, I would say, using just the intraoral scanner alone.
Okay. And then what are the consequences for like per 10 per 20 micron? Like
Okay,
that difference, how are you actually going to see that show up in a final product?
why would it matter, right? Why 50 micron is better, 100 micron, and 200 micron? Ideally, you don't want to have a difference at all, but that's not possible. Uh, the higher inaccuracy, we found that the bigger the gap is, the more likely the prosthesis would fail. And the prosthesis fail meaning that it could be because, if you have the metal framework, when the patient bite on it and it flex a little, it could break off the veneer, which it could be a plastic, could be a ceramic, could be zirconia. If the whole thing is prosthesis is zirconia, three things may happen, right? The zirconia may fractures. The screw may be loose because it might be so hard the screw take more load. Or if the prosthesis doesn't break, the screw doesn't get loose, it may transfer too much load on certain implant. Remember, because if it misfit, it may overload in certain implant. In general, fortunately, even if the prostheses are not really fit, in general, the implant usually are the last thing that we have to worry about. The implant usually take the load fine. The only part that not taking load is the screw and the prosthesis.
So to sum it up, a difference of 50 microns does matter. And
Right,
it matters because that angle is going to put pressure on not the implant itself, but the fragile parts around the implant.
right, right.
Okay. Yeah.
And the weakest link usually be either the screw or the material that are part of the prosthesis.
I think something that people who don't have a ton of experience with the dental industry know is that there are so many providers of screws. There's so many different screw types, scan bodies, implant manufacturers. And so where my head automatically goes is you mentioned the compatibility of the cap system, but how compatible actually is it? Like as because maybe it's compatible to 100 different
Mm-hmm.
manufacturers or implant connections, but there might be 1,000 or 2,000 on the market. So that's not a whole big percent, if that makes sense. So like
So,
how
so that
compatible percentage wise is
That,
it?
that's a good question. So there's multiple layer on that question, right? I was just going to break them down for different things. Number one is the compatibility issues, right? The compatibility issue meaning that for a long time I was on the camp of I only use the part that come from the implant manufacturer because I only believe that the implant manufacturer make everything that fit together best, including the scan body, including the abutment, including the screw, including prosthetic part, including everything. Now they are my belief change, and it's not just because of I change my belief randomly. So and actually the study from a couple study, one study from Indiana University, and they look into the major implant company and their part, and they also look at major part manufacturers. And part manufacturer, dynamic abutment is one, right? They not make their own implant, they are part manufacturer. And then they also have people random manufacturer that make parts. So the study conclude that the major implant company part and the major manufacturer of implant company part, their compatibility seem to be no statistically significant.
Yeah.
But if you buy a part from random company, usually they don't fit very well. And it's go with because of the part that we get from dynamic abutment are just cost as much as the regular implant company. So it's go from the machinery and precision of the. I would suggest if you're gonna want third-party part, you want the high-end third-party, but not by random third-party part. Now, the next question is like how many implant systems that we have, right? And how would be a compatibility? Now, I would say we probably have 1,000 implant systems in the world,
1,000.
probably more than that.
Or okay, multiple thousands.
Multiple thousand.
Okay.
At some point, I tease my friend that every 2 weeks somebody in Korea would create, and this is not prejudice. Somebody in Korea would produce a new implant system,
Yeah.
and at some point it's like that. At some point it's like that. So because the implant part machinery can evolve so quickly, the good thing about it is majority of those implant systems utilize the same connection. And now the systems start to converge, meaning that many implant systems start to make the same MUA, multi-unit abutment. The multi-unit abutment, even though the inside, the part of screw that connect to the implant may be different, but the multi-unit abutment start to look alike. So then technically you don't have to be compatible for all thousands of implants. You just need to be compatible majority of the major implant system. And the major implant system, people would argue there are only maybe 4 to 10 major implant system in the world. And the rest of them have part that compatible to those.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, that's way less than I thought.
Right, right. But
There's a
it
lot.
but it's always a nightmare when someone come up with some great idea and make weird implants and thinking about that we have the problem would be when we try to find a part when the
Yeah.
company gone bankrupt and we don't have a part to put on top of those like a screw or the part that can kind of fit inside the screw. But yeah, that's a good question.
That makes sense. Um, and I think you've talked about this a little bit, especially with that last question, or the last two. But where do you think um the future of full arch implant impressions, where do you think they're going? Um, because I mean we've talked about there are thousands of options out there. There are these new technologies that are coming up, there are these problems. Do you think that one system is going to emerge as and be developed as the best, or do you think something else is going to come out?
So I think that also an excellent question. So I think number one, the intraoral scanner getting better every day. The scanner that I use today are far better than the scanner I used 10 years ago. And that's just 10 years ago, right? And meaning that the accuracy of the scanner today is so much better than the scanner that I have 10 years ago in terms of producing the scan that mimic the soft tissue or the part of the implant. That's one, right? So I can see that the we will use intraoral scanners to scan implants. Number two is the you can see that it's evolved from the photogrammetry, extraoral photogrammetry, evolved to intraoral photogrammetry, and now it's sort of kind of translate into the better intraoral scanner. I suspect that in the transition state, majority of intraoral scanner gonna have an intraoral photogrammetry option. Currently, there may be only one system that I know of that have those, but eventually you have all of them.
Yeah.
So, and in comparing the intraoral photogrammetry and the enhancement of intraoral technology, I think we're gonna get scan for arch implant all the time soon.
Yeah.
And I think that the scan body right now we probably have thousands of scan body system. I think that probably gonna continue to have, But I think that people are gonna start to use the one that produce the best result. And I
Yeah.
always tell people that even though we don't have a trial for scan body because nobody does run the clinical trial, but the market is the best clinical trial. The thing
Yeah.
that stay into the market and the
Mm,
thing that people keep continue to use and use because it work, that are gonna stay. The thing that doesn't work gonna go away.
yeah. And I think, of course, the market is also the harshest
Mm-hmm.
test
Mm-hmm.
of a system. And one thing that I'm wondering about with all these different systems is one thing we do at DDI, at Digital Dentistry Innovation, is focus on workflows. And so with these systems, how does a digital workflow compare to a conventional workflow?
That's an excellent question. So there's a miniature answer on this 4-arch implant and a bigger question that we can answer. I'm gonna answer the small one first, right? So the main advantage of the CAP system is that we don't change the workflow that they already use. Imagine, right? Oh, this extraoral photogrammetry or intraoral photogrammetry is so great. It's so great. And I'm not saying not good, but guess what? I have to have this camera. I have to have this specific scanner, right? So I have to buy those things just to take images of this one or two patients that I have per week. Versus I use the scanner, the same scanner every day for every patient for everything. Why can't I just put this a few part and I'm just screw in there and scan it? So the idea is not to disrupt the workflow. The idea is to enhance the workflow. And this is the part that a lot of people in the dental school and in the practice, I think is they make a mistake. So I think what we have to do was we pick the workflow and we customize the technology to enhance our workflow, not the other way around. I'm not going to change the way I do my dentistry because I have a new technology. The technology should adopt the way of me treating the patient. And same go with this is the way I'm going to teach my dental student. The technology should come help me teach dental students, not giving me more work,
Right.
right? I should not have to adapt the way I teach to technology. The technology should evolve around how I want to teach my dental student. And same go with my practice. Same go with how my student learn. If I am a dental student or I'm a dental resident, I want the technology to adopt it to the way I want to learn, not I have to adopt to technology, which is the way misconception of how people adopt technology. And I think that what we do at AHEAD and what we do at DDI is to try to help dental school or practices or learners to cope with these changes and not try to put too much thing for them, but try to enhance what they have
Mm.
through technology, which is the other way to think about things.
Yeah. And I mean, in um, hosting a podcast in 2026 talking about digital technology without talking about I think something would be missing. Um, and so this is what we're trying to do as well. How do you see AI fitting into the full arch implant workflow? And what I mean is like, um, could AI eventually help identify skinny errors or predict prosthetic fits or determine digital impressions? Like if they're sufficiently accurate, where do you see that fitting in?
That is an excellent question. So a lot of dentists doesn't know that they already use AI. Every intraoral scanner that they scan have some kind of AI in it. Every time they take a CBCT, they have some kind of AI in it. Every time they do a planning for implant, they have an AI component to it. And I'm not saying that just happening. It happened long time ago, but we just now noticing them. Number one, the AI is already here. You cannot choose to not be with or without it. You already use it. And if you say, oh, I don't use intraoral scan, I do conventional impression. Your lab scan your impression. Your lab use software to design your prosthesis. The software that the lab use already have AI in it. If you do same day crown, it's already have AI in it. Everything you do is AI, but I'm not saying an AI in terms of automated everything.
Yeah.
But I can already see that soon the intraoral scanner, as soon as you scan, going to tell you, hey, you know what, Sompop, this is not an accurate scan. I can already see this is an error. So it would tell me, and we already have AI for diagnostic of radiography, right? That it can read radiograph. It can read the CBCT. It can do segmentation of CBCT. Now for the scanning, it can do the same thing, right? It already have. So you can scan, it can segment, these are implant, these are I can imagine that it would be able to virtually design the prosthesis while you are scanning the patient soon. And the advantage, and you would say, Gardner would say, oh, what is the advantage? The advantage would say, okay, if you have your grandmother and I take all her teeth out, I put all the implant, I scan it, I can design her prosthesis in real time and I print it. By the time she leaving my office, she already have her printed teeth. And we already doing it. It's just gonna make things more precise and faster. And we just talk about AI for the full arch prosthesis. And if you imagine back a couple years ago, when as soon as I scan the prosthesis, I have to send it to the lab,
Mhm.
and I can send it to design. The rate limiting step, one of the rate limiting step is how long the person need to kind of put the teeth in, design together. Now you have an AI that can decide those things in 30 seconds,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, and we used to outsource those things to overseas. So I have a people in Egypt or in Thailand or in Korea that design stuff for me. So soon they'll be out of job, you know. I think a lot of them already out of job because the
Wow.
AI does all those for us.
Yeah. And I think when clinicians or people who own their private practice, or maybe deans of schools who haven't implemented all this technology. And we haven't even talked about half the technology, the new technology out there, right? We still haven't even talked about haptics. We haven't talked about AR, VR, XR, or any of that other stuff that's also getting big. But I think that um, it could be overwhelming almost to someone who is not fully advanced. Because how could you be, right? We hear repeatedly technology is advancing faster than clinicians or faster than really anyone can adopt it, especially now that AI is sort of boosting itself forward. So, what advice would you give to dentists or clinicians or deans who want to begin incorporating dental implant workflows, haptics, AI, AR, VR, XR, but haven't that maybe don't know where to start, right? Or are trying to start, but it's slow. What's the advice?
So, so I think that number one is be vigilant of the changes technologies, and I think that nowadays, people reach out to me all over the world. So I'm not just advise people in the United States, but I almost advise people overseas, and not like I'm going there all the time. But now it's easy enough that we have a connection, meaning that you can connect to the world expert in real time. So number one, make sure you get involved, and we have this ahead consortium that we have probably over 100 members around the world, and these are high level experts that are interested in technology. So one, be up to date, be involved with organization. Number two is reach out to expert, and if you cannot think of expert, we can help you. And I'm not claiming that I'm the expert on everything, but I claim that I'm probably one of the few people in the world that know most people that involved in these kind of technology. I'm not the expert, but I know most of the experts.
You know,
So
yeah.
I could help either dental school or practices or DSO or to incorporate the technology that fit with their workflow. What I don't want to happen is some dean or some private practitioner or some administrator of big DSO organization look at technology. Oh, this is great. Let's implement this. And that turned out to be usually a disaster to the patient or to dental student to organization later, because that's not what fitting with their workflow. And that's why we have a head, that's why we have DDI. We are here to help. And it's not that we want to we not that we are expert on everything, but we can help facilitate the conversation and put together expert with the practitioner or the educator or the administrator.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's great. So, um, basically, get help.
Get
There's
help.
help. Thank you, Sompop. I think that's a perfect question to wrap it all up. And thank you for joining us on the first episode of Proscast. Hopefully, once this goes out, we can get, like you said, the market is the best place for feedback, right? So maybe on our next episode, we get to answer questions that pop up from when we post on LinkedIn, Instagram. And I mean, even though I've been working with you for a long time, you've given me a tremendous amount to think about technology and dentistry and the way that we're going to educate clinicians so that we can deliver better healthcare. And then for everyone watching, listening, Proscast, what we're doing basically is we want to bring together clinical experts, educators, researchers, technology leaders, basically any industry stakeholders in healthcare and discuss ideas, technologies, anything that can shape the future of dentistry. And again, I want to thank our sponsors, Digital Dentistry Innovation, and then Dynamic Abutment Solutions. I'm Garner Guillory. This is Proscast, and we'll see you on the next episode.